Well, good evening and welcome to the Saga Workshop series, and thank you for joining me. To say that the year 2020 has been an out of the ordinary would be an understatement. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge the grit and the resiliency that I have seen from our chapters, our members, our friends, and our families. It has not been easy, and I know that it will not be for nothing. With the postponement of our centennial celebration and Grand Conclave Kansas City, we knew that we had an obligation and an opportunity to engage with our members in new ways. The Saga Workshop series is one of those ways and was born out of a desire to still deliver a taste of the member experience that could have been this summer. I hope that you will continue to join us throughout the rest of the summer as we continue to deliver high quality educational programming, just in a different way. Before I begin to talk about myself and my workshop that I will be sharing with you this evening, I want to get a few logistical notes out of the way. Please forgive me for any technical difficulties we may experience this evening. Trying anything for the first time can be an interesting experience, to say the least, but I am confident that we will persevere and get through. I have muted all of the participants in order to avoid accidental background noise, and you will remain muted throughout the presentation. If you do have an immediate question, you can use the raise hand feature, or you can put your question in the chat. Please know that there will be time at the end for any Q&A. If you would like to share your video, you are welcome to, but I ask that you please be aware of your surroundings and what may be behind you for all to see. One last note about the chat is that it defaults to send your messages to all participants. If you wish to send me a private message, you will have to select that option in the chat box. Okay, that's all I have. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, my name is Ben Nelson, and it is my distinct pleasure to serve as the Assistant Director of Education and Wellness at Sigma Tau Gamma headquarters. I am a member of the organization and was a charter member of the Washington State chapter. I currently live in Carmel, Indiana, although I was born and raised near Aberdeen, Washington, a small coastal town situated along Grays Harbor off the Pacific Ocean. I love to travel and have visited 30 states, 1 US territory, and 6 countries. Okay, I don't really enjoy talking about myself, so let's move on to talking about this workshop. Suffice it to say that our future is uncertain. We are surrounded by confusion, by chaos. People are angry. Our world is shaken. I think that taking the time to acknowledge that is important. I think it's also important to acknowledge that I think that in the end, everything is going to be okay. I'm a big believer in the power of having a growth mindset, in maintaining positivity, and in searching for light in even the darkest of places. Today, I'm going to focus on what our fraternal communities could look like this coming fall. I want to make it clear that I do not have all the answers, nor does anyone else. We don't really know what next week will bring, let alone next semester. The best that we can do is to take an educated guess based on expert opinion and fact and plan accordingly. In this workshop, I'm going to cover really 4 topics. Likely scenarios for what the fall semester could look like, current health and safety guidelines from the CDC, typical chapter operations and how to pivot from normal operations to deal with current circumstances. Just those 4 things. Let's go ahead and get started. For further reading on this topic, I want to direct you to a blog post by Fired Up, our recruitment and growth partners, titled Digital Recruitment: What if recruitment is canceled? There you can find these 4 scenarios in addition to more than 23 practical solutions, 9 digital recruitment principles, and 3 detailed examples for your consideration. The first likely scenario is that in the fall, school is 100% online. No one comes back to campus. Or there's another scare and shutdown. Students are not permitted to return to campus. Classes are exclusively online. No on-campus housing, no sports, no tailgates, no convocation, no orientation, no in-person events, no work week, no traditional recruitment like we're used to having. Or efforts to control the virus reverse. There is a spike in August or September. Students on campus are quarantined or encouraged to stay home again. Is it extreme? Yeah. Is it impossible? No. Is it worth a conversation to think about strategies and possible scenarios for a 100% online semester? Maybe. The second scenario is a gradual return to campus. Returning students, new students, faculty, and staff might be experiencing illness or choosing to self-quarantine and are encouraged to stay home. Perhaps those who are medically cleared come back to campus gradually throughout August, September, October, maybe even into November and December. This scenario is still a stretch, but not crazy given the limited information we have right now about this virus. There is some precedent suggesting that viral outbreaks like this don't just go away. As people start to gather again, it's possible that we'll see another spike in infections and possibly another round of quarantines or more. The third likely scenario is that social distancing continues on campus. Health professionals continue to discourage large gatherings. When gathering groups are asked to make sure that there are no more than 10 or 25 people gathering, for example. This would mean no in-person full chapter meetings, no tailgates, no mixers, no yard shows, no theater seminars, no buffets at the cafeteria, no philanthropy events, no traditional homecoming, no meet the Greeks, no student org fairs, no traditional IFC or Panhellenic formal rush or rounds, recruitment, no chapter or council sponsored week events, no traditional bid day. In this scenario, we'd all be on campus. We could continue to do small group stuff, but most of the full chapter or event-based activities that we're used to doing would require an alternative strategy. And this is where we're going to spend a lot of our time focusing the rest of our conversation today. The fourth scenario is a new normal, but things just feel different on campus. We are all a little different. Student perspectives and priorities are a little different. Student choices about time, money, relationships are a little different. The way we see the world and the future is different. Maybe parents are even more protective and even more involved. Maybe things like tall rush boards, door stacks, t-shirt designs, party rounds, and interest sessions feel different to our members or the students they're designed to attract. Maybe the health scare is over, so we return to school with plans to do the same thing we did last year. We discover that our recruitment plans are the same as last year, but everyone involved in those plans has changed. Keep in mind that it's a very possible scenario that the majority of the incoming freshmen will be a few months removed from a life-altering experience. Their senior year of high school was taken from them. No spring break, no prom, no graduation ceremony, no yearbook signing, no final day of class to hug your friends and say goodbye. How will those same students come to college? What will they value? What will they be looking for? Will we be ready to offer it? Scenario 5 is, who knows? Maybe it's none of these things. Maybe it's all of these things. You just don't know. So the big question becomes, can we attract, select, and secure people for fraternities and sororities with limited to no face-to-face interaction? In the year 2020, The answer is obviously yes. Of course we can. So let's do it. Planning for an unknown future is a little bit like a chess strategy, which is to say, if you only have one strategy, you'll probably lose. You must be able to think 3 or 4 steps ahead, be able to anticipate your opponent's moves, or at the very least, have a counter move ready to deploy. We don't know how the virus will change or impact us in the future. All we can do is plan and plan again. That means a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and however many variables you need to have to make sure you aren't caught by surprise. The best thing that you can do is to listen to the experts and plan for what they say might happen, while also planning for what the opposite of what they might say might happen, and something in between. It's important to realize and acknowledge that at the end of the day, you can't plan for everything, but planning for something is 100% better than not planning at all. I now want to share with you the recommendations that are currently being issued as guidance from the CDC. You must keep these things in mind when returning or planning to return for your potential return for the fall. I'm sure you've heard them before, but as the leaders and members of your chapters, you must take your own safety and the safety of your brothers very seriously. There is currently no vaccine to prevent coronavirus disease 2019, so known as COVID-19. We cannot count on a vaccine being readily available before we return. Simply put, the best way to prevent illness is to avoid being around those who are sick or may have been exposed to the virus. This is why social distancing has been and continues to be so important. This pandemic is not over. The virus is thought to spread mainly from person to person, and that means between people who are in close contact with one another, within about 6 feet. It's spread through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby, or possibly be inhaled through the lungs. Some recent studies have even suggested that COVID-19 may be spread by people who are not showing symptoms. I encourage you to visit the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention website to learn more about how you can prevent and protect yourself from COVID-19. The best practices that are available to us right now are probably common sense to you, but it's the best we have. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, especially after you've been in a public place or after blowing your nose, coughing, or sneezing. If soap and water are not easily or readily available, be sure to use a hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Cover all surfaces of your hands and rub them together until they feel dry. Avoid touching your nose, eyes, and mouth with unwashed hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick, even inside your own home. If possible, maintain 6 feet between the person who is sick and other members of the household. If you can, put distance between yourself and other people outside of your home. And I know that's not possible for everyone, so do the best you can, and if you have been exposed to the virus, then self-isolate yourself as much as possible, and if you do go out, be sure to wear a mask. Remember that some people without symptoms may be able to spread the virus. Remember, stay at least 6 feet or about 2 arms length away from other people. Do not gather in groups. Stay out of crowded places and avoid mass gatherings. Keeping distance from others is especially important for people who are at higher risk of getting very sick. It's important to remember that you could spread COVID-19 to others even if you do not feel sick. This is why it is so important that everyone should wear a cloth face cover when they go out in public, for example, to the grocery store or to pick up other necessities. Cloth face coverings should not be placed on young children under age 2, anyone who has trouble breathing or is unconscious, incapacitated, or otherwise unable to remove the mask without assistance. Remember, the cloth face cover is meant to protect other people from you in case you are infected. Wearing a cloth face cover will not necessarily prevent you from inhaling the virus if it's in the air. Do not use a face mask that was meant for a healthcare worker. The best thing you can do is buy a mask online or make one yourself, as N95 masks are in short supply. Continue to keep about 6 feet between yourself and others. The cloth face cover is not a substitute for social distancing. If you are in a private setting and do not have on your face cloth covering, remember to always cover your mouth and nose with a tissue, or sneeze into your arm, or cough into your arm inside the elbow. Throw away used tissues in the trash immediately and wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Remember, if you can't wash your hands, keep a hand sanitizer with you that contains at least 60% alcohol. If you can't find hand sanitizer, you can find instructions for making it yourself from the CDC. Clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces every single day. This includes tables, doorknobs, light switches, countertops, handles, desks, phones, keyboards, toilets, faucets, sinks, and more. If surfaces are dirty, clean them. Use detergent or soap and water prior to disinfection. Then use a household disinfectant. Most common EPA-registered household disinfectants will work. Be alert for symptoms. Watch for fever, cough, shortness of breath, or other symptoms of COVID-19. Especially important if you are running essential errands, going into the office or workplace, or in settings where it may be difficult to keep a physical distance of 6 feet. Take your temperature if symptoms develop. Don't take your temperature within 30 minutes of exercising or after taking medications that can lower your temperature, like acetaminophen or Tylenol. As always, follow CDC guidance if symptoms develop. I encourage you to visit the CDC website at the link at the bottom of this screen for more information. It's important to note all the different factors that are going to play into your decision making. Truthfully, I can't sit here and tell you exactly what all 81 chapters in 29 different states are going to face when it comes to the fall semester. At least not at this moment. Now is the time to take initiative and familiarize yourself with the regulations and circumstances of wherever you are, and continue to monitor them throughout the summer and into the fall. Let's move into what the fall could look like and spend some time reviewing chapter operations and considerations to keep in mind for pivoting from what you would consider a normal semester to our current circumstances. When you really boil it down, I think there are about 8 specific things that each and every chapter is focusing on in a given semester. This is the boilerplate member experience, if you will. Each chapter is unique in the way they do things, but these 8 things are what I believe to be areas of focus for each chapter this fall. Those 8 things are academic success, Brotherhood events, community service events, financial integrity, member development programs, philanthropy, recruitment, and social events. Let's go through each one of these and look at some considerations. If you have a chapter house with members living there and taking online classes, do what you can to offer a quiet learning environment. Work with your campus advising office for resources related to online learning. Online classes are really hard for a lot of people. Be patient and empathetic with your brothers while still holding them to a high standard. As a national organization, we still require a minimum 2.5 GPA to remain in good standing, and many chapters, IFCs, or Greek councils have instituted higher requirements. At the end of the day, always remember you can help, or excuse me, at the end of the day, remember to always help each other if you can. If required to distance, consider moving from study tables to a study buddy system or small groups of people working on their own. Consider utilizing Google Drive or another hosting device rather than face-to-face collaboration. Encourage your members to connect with their instructors through virtual office hours or other means. Online school is still school, not a vacation. It is crucial now more than ever that we find ways to connect in an online world. Don't let a week go by without ensuring that every single member of your organization has connected with someone else from the organization. After all, social distancing does not have to mean social isolation. I encourage you to establish a video service and group communication platform that everyone can use. We suggest Slack for the ability to create channels for the organization of topics, as well as Zoom or Uber Conference to host large groups on video. If you are doing events, be sure to consider the health guidelines that I went over just a few minutes ago. Consider hosting smaller, more intimate events and really utilize the big brother, little brother relationships. Now is the time to take the opportunity to mix groups of people who don't normally mix, to break up cliques, and to encourage one-on-one interaction. If you've never had dinner with your brother and just spent a couple of hours talking about life, I highly encourage you to do so. If you can go out, go out. If you have to stay in, stay in, but just take the time to connect with each other, learn from each other, and grow together. That's true brotherhood. I encourage you to visit our partners at Fired Up. They have a ton of free resources out there, including a resource titled 44 Ways to Support Brotherhood and Sisterhood Virtually. It's great. Check it out. You're probably wondering how you can do community service during a pandemic. I think it's still possible. You just need to reimagine what community service looks like for your chapter. Now is the time for individuals to take initiative and complete service on their own, rather than depending on one big service weekend where the whole chapter goes out and works on a project. It's also important to remember that service doesn't necessarily have to benefit any specific organization. It can benefit your family, your friends, your neighbors, and anyone else in your community. That's why it's called community service. Try doing things you've never done before and helping people you've never thought of helping before. At the end of the day, just remember to keep yourself and others safe and to adhere to all health guidelines in place at the time. You may have had to have this conversation with a member already. With classes online, events canceled, and campuses closed, members may be asking, is this still worth it? To me, the answer is yes. Fraternity and sorority is worth the cost, even if you don't get to do as many fun, big events that we've come to associate with fraternity and sorority life. The truth is that events don't define us. Shirts don't define us. Even our letters don't necessarily define us. What defines us are our relationships with each other, and a powerful relationship with a fraternity brother or sorority sister is always worth it. It's worth the money, it's worth the time, it's worth the energy. Fraternity and sorority is a little bit like marriage. It's for better or for worse. There are good times and there are bad times. True, sometimes it doesn't always work out, but more often, if you try hard and you truly work to strengthen your love for one another, it will work out. I truly believe that each and every one of you are meant to be here in this organization to fight for it. In this time, you have a couple of options. If you can't have big events, you can pivot a little bit. Since expenses would be reduced, you could choose to lower dues. That's pretty simple. Lower expenses, lower dues. It's important to keep in mind that national dues and fees are still an expectation for each chapter. At the end of the day, we are a dues-paying membership organization, and we are still providing resources. We are still supporting one another, even if it might be virtually. Our fraternity is no different than it was before COVID-19. Another option is to redirect resources. For example, perhaps you take the money that you save from not having formal and give every member a book stipend. Perhaps you hire a chapter tutor for the semester. Perhaps you pay for one meal per member every week. Perhaps you use it to pay off debt. Or perhaps you put the money into savings for when things are truly back to normal. It's your money, it's your decision. The most important thing you can do is help each other and to practice empathy during this time. For some, especially for whom they or their families are out of work, truly may not be able to afford it. Others may simply need a little bit more time, if the chapter is willing to cover expenses up front. And maybe one member is truly just very down on his luck, but it would be a tragedy for the chapter to lose him. Perhaps the chapter could band together for each member to contribute to cover his dues for the semester. Again, it's up to you. But I believe fraternity and sorority will always be worth the cost. Another big piece of the fraternity experience is the member development programs you have the opportunity to participate in. Many chapters host several sessions, workshops, and programs every semester on a variety of topics, from health and wellness, to hazing prevention, to sexual violence prevention, academic success, and more. You can still do that. I encourage you to go virtual where you can and utilize the vast resources available to you and work with campus staff and offices to deliver those resources to your members. Don't try to reinvent the wheel or make yourself an expert. There are true experts out there who will happily join your Zoom chapter meeting to talk about your chosen subject. Make use of your alumni and chapter volunteers, as well as your fraternity and sorority advisor and your IFC or Greek council. They will likely be spending their summers developing resources for you to utilize in the fall, so be sure to seek them out. Similarly to community service, philanthropy can easily be done online. In fact, most of our chapters already do online fundraising through our strategic partnership with CrowdChange. You can easily set up virtual fundraisers. In fact, if you go to CrowdChange's website, they have a list of virtual fundraising ideas already started. You can easily do personal challenges, get friends and family involved, and use social media like you already do. You can go to sigta.crowdchange.co to create an event today. If you have questions about using CrowdChange, please contact their help desk and they will be happy to assist you. Something that is on everyone's mind, I know it's on mine, is how do we recruit virtually? And for me, how do I support my chapters in recruiting virtually? Well, the good news is you probably already have. The other good news is that Our philosophy behind recruitment has not changed, but your tools have. You also now have the opportunity to make contact with more people than ever before through social media, calls, texts, and virtual meetings and virtual events. I encourage everyone who can to get more information on the SIGTOG growth system by tuning into our Director of Recruitment Roundtable call on June 15th at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time for a special announcement of an outstanding resource being offered to all chapters. And that Recruitment Roundtable is open to directors of recruitment from every chapter, chapter presidents from every chapter, and alumni advisors from every chapter. At the end of the day, people join people, and your people are still there. Use them. And normally, I would say that handshakes lead to conversations. It may not be the best time to shake someone's hand, at least without remembering to not touch your face and immediately sanitize. So instead, I'll say that interactions lead to conversations. Conversations lead to relationships. Relationships lead to collaboration. Collaboration leads to organization. And as we already said, as we already know, organizations change the world. You can change the world. We can change the world. I urge you to seek guidance from your IFC or Greek council, who should be spending the summer planning how recruitment will look differently this fall, especially if you have any formalized recruitment process. I would also say that now is the time to set aside petty differences and truly partner with the community. We all have a grave reality of lower admissions, lower attendance, lower recruitment. Help each other, help yourselves. Lastly, and most importantly, don't wait. You must start now in order to be successful. You have nothing to gain and everything to lose by waiting to act. And again, I encourage you to visit our friends at Fired Up and utilize their resources that they are offering for absolutely free, in addition to the resources and the training that we will be offering throughout this summer in partnership with Fired Up to every single chapter. Finally, social events. Honestly, I can't promise you that you'll have social events in the fall. I just don't know. And if you do, they might look very different. What I would say is consider hosting smaller, more intimate events. Be sure to follow all health and safety guidelines. Do not make yourself responsible for another outbreak in your community. You also have the opportunity to redefine what it means to be social. Social does not always have to be used as a noun. Instead, let it be an adjective. Let social mean companionship, community. Let it mean brotherhood and sisterhood. We were founded with that ideal of social in mind. Let's bring that back. Now's the time. My last point is this. Fraternity and sorority will endure. We have survived world wars, global conflict, famine, pandemics, depressions and recessions, civil unrest, and more throughout our long history. This will not be our end. Keep faith in each other and in yourselves. You can do this. I encourage you to acknowledge the severity of the situation and then move on. Fraternity and sorority membership will be significantly impacted by COVID-19. We will lose members. we will have a harder time attracting and securing new members this fall. We absolutely must act now. You should reprioritize. When you took over your position, you might not have had growth at the top of your priority list. It should be there now. Consider rearranging your leadership to make sure your top talent is engaged with marketing, recruitment, new member education, and retention. This is an all hands on deck situation. Gather your workhorses and get to work. You might need to move some of your priorities down the list and make sure you double, triple, and maybe even quadruple your efforts and resources related to membership growth. Identify a purpose to rally around. Survival, believe it or not, is a pretty poor rally cry at the end of the day. No championship team ever won because their team was energized around not dying, not losing. So, as a chapter leader, right now is the time to pick something that your chapter will be about. What is the mission your chapter is on this year? What do you want to attract more people to help you accomplish? Be about something. Be specific. Your members will rally together around a cause they actually care about. They'll work for a purpose. And they won't just work because you ask them to. This purpose should also serve as your core marketing narrative. Write a paragraph about your vision and use it to communicate what your chapter is about to potential members and parents. Sigma Tau Gamma has a purpose. Sigma Tau Gamma has a vision. Sigma Tau Gamma has principles. Use them to guide your narrative, to build your rallying cry. Fill your funnel. If you need access to non-affiliated students, so you can start building relationships and trust with them. Ask for lists from your campus and any other source you can think of. Ask again. Ask your council to provide immediate access to prospects who have indicated interest. Start doing prospecting and pipelining work now. Your team of workforces that I mentioned earlier, their first job is to add 50% more names to your list than you had last year. Utilize your resources. Utilize your chapter liaisons at headquarters. Utilize the resources offered by our partners at Fired Up and Omega Phi. Utilize each other. You can do this. I believe in you. I'd like to take a moment to thank you all for joining us this evening.